Hi, I'm Richard Friedman, and welcome to my video for August 26, 2026. Knocking off August, folks. Here is my cartoon for today, which is my video cartoon for today. Here is the future, possibly the future USS carrier, USS aircraft carrier, USS Donald J. Trump, at launch with Pete Hegseth, President Trump, watching out as the ship is being launched with Secretary of War. We always give that to Pete, Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth here. And here is the introduction to the cartoon. Richard Trump dream aircraft carrier renamed after him with, quote, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth at launching. Given the U.S., here's the ship, there's the flag, President Donald J. Trump, sailing along here, moving out to sea. Okay, given the U.S. Navy is now considering renaming a carrier now under construction, that had been designated to be named the USS Doris Miller. They called him Dory. Doris Miller, in honor of Miller, a black World War II Navy cook and hero who, without training, had manned an anti-aircraft machine gun fired at Japanese warplanes. Those Japanese planes were coming over Pearl Harbor, and he's probably cooking up those hash browns, looked up there, saw the Japanese planes, forget these hash browns, went out, grabbed the gun, the first gun, he could see the machine gun, and boom, 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 fired, and he shot, they say, at least one down. The Navy authenticated that. So here's how that goes now. Under construction, and a black World War II Navy cook and hero who, without training, had manned an anti-aircraft machine gun fired at Japanese warplanes, and is officially credited by the U.S. Navy with shooting down at least one Japanese aircraft. One of those Zeros, flying over there. Could have been, they were dropping those things. You've seen those newsreel pictures of what went on there that morning of December 7th, 1941, okay, is officially credited by the U.S. Navy with shooting down at least one Japanese aircraft. That's what he got credit for, and was awarded the Navy Cross for all his actions during that Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in the early morning hours of December 7th, 1941. Like I said, there he was with those hash brown potatoes, and next thing, boom, bombs dropping, bang, boom, and he dropped those potatoes, and he went out there and manned the guns, and he shot one. He shot at least one down. He did other things that he was awarded the Navy Cross for all his total actions. That wasn't the only thing he did. Okay, now, given Secretary Hegseth has faced criticism, the Secretary of War, I give that to Pete, the Secretary of War. Officially, Congress has to claim it, has to vote on that, but we give it to Pete for making statements that critics say demean and undermine women in combat roles. So Hegseth didn't actually come out and say we were going to kick all women out of the armed forces. He didn't say that. No, but he said it perhaps in a more subtle way. Some people interpret it that way, that he, not that he was going to kick them out, but that he favored men over women to a significant degree that would influence promotions and commands and so forth like that. For making statements that critics say demean and undermine women in combat roles, like asserting that the military lowered physical standards to accommodate women, and they said that, and stating amid his confirmation that he does not want troops in combat units who can't meet the same combat arms physical standards as men. Okay, so he's not too gung-ho on women getting into fighting positions. That would apply also to being on, I would assume, on an aircraft carrier as well as on land combat. You would have to assume that. And given the Secretary of War has announced a new policy of requiring annual testosterone deficiency screenings, in other words, for any male service member aged 30 and older as part of their routine annual health assessment. So that part of their overall physical evaluation will be their testosterone level, testosterone. Okay, it's a male hormone, and troops with low testosterone levels will be offered voluntary hormone therapy. So you don't have to take it if you don't want it, but it's highly recommended by the Secretary of War that you do. Otherwise, you could wind up at a desk job sharpening pencils, and that would not be, you would not be considered an elite warrior if your testosterone level was low, you know. So again, that was that, and this is a direct quote that I just, not a direct quote, it's a basic quote from what I said. I can't go on and on and on and go on forever, but I'm just going to give you a basic paraphrase of what Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said regarding that. He said basically, this will ensure your biological foundation as an elite warrior. So in other words, if you don't have a biological foundation, you can't have a biological foundation as a warrior. If your testosterone is low, you can't do that. So what you can be is an elite pencil sharpener. Maybe an elite pencil sharpener sitting at a desk sharpening pencils all day. Maybe you could be an elite at that. But you're not elite. If your testosterone goes below, too low, and it's not up to our standards, then you don't have the biological foundation. Okay, he used that terminology. Okay, now here's the drift of this cartoon here, and here is the ship. Okay, that the Navy is considering this now. It hasn't been done. The Navy is considering it had been on the chart for this to be the USS Doris Miller, after that man I just mentioned. It was on the charts that now the United States Navy is now considering giving the Miller another ship. You know, I don't know what kind of ship they're going to give him, but it won't be another aircraft carrier. They're going to give him. I don't know. I don't want to go there. But I'm just saying here, they're not going to. They're going to change the name. The U.S. Navy is considering changing the name instead to the USS Donald J. Trump. Okay, and here is the dialogue that I made up. Here goes the ship. You see there, and there is the flag of President carrying high Donald J. Trump. There he is, sailing along here, going out to sea. Here it goes, going out to sea. There it's sailing off. And here is Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and President Donald J. Trump giving thumbs up to the ship, and Pete giving thumbs up to President Trump and the ship. And here it goes. And here's how it went. And President Trump says, here's President Trump, and he's saying to Pete as it sails out to sea, he's saying, Pete, the USS Donald J. Trump will serve to keep our Strait of Hormuz open and operating. Because President Trump is always saying now the strait is open and operating. Well, just yesterday, this is what I heard, that I haven't visited the strait, but that Iran and Oman are now have laid the foundation for a temporary passageway through the strait, and they're taking out some mines and stuff that have been dropped there and laying a passageway, which you got to view as a preliminary for tolls. You know, you don't go through the hassle of expense and all that, labor and all that involvement for the sake without a monetary motivation there. So they're probably going to, it could be like a harbinger of the tolls that they're going to charge to go through their designated pathway, waterway, you know. So that in essence, they're going to have their own Strait of Hormuz, because you can't guarantee, if you don't follow their path, you can't guarantee them safe passage. You're not going to blow up into a mine, or you're not going to get hit by one of those drones or missiles. We can't guarantee you that, folks. So you might as well take the passage and pay your toll. You know, it's a lot cheaper than 250 million barrels of oil going into the ocean there, or into the strait, let's put it that way. So there you have that. So President Trump, so there's a difference now and President Trump has threatened Oman very, very strongly, very strongly, in terms of if they got involved with Iran, and now they have, as reported yesterday, so we'll see what happens there. So that's the latest on this, focusing just on this particular microcosm of what's going on here, okay, in the totality of it all, okay? Now, here is Pete Hegseth, and he's responding here. Here's Pete. Here he is, Secretary of War Pete. Here he is. And he's giving thumbs up and responding, saying, yes, Mr. President, its all-male crew will be screened for any testosterone deficiencies. So he's gonna make sure that all the men on that aircraft carrier have a good level of testosterone, to get them through the challenges of being an American warrior. And there you have it, folks. And that was my kind of presentation here. And let's just zoom in. There was President Trump giving thumbs up to the ship that, as I said before, the Navy is considering renaming after him, the USS Donald J. Trump. There was Pete Hegseth waving goodbye to the ship there as it sails out. There it is. And there goes, and there was the flag on top of the ship. Donald J. Trump flag flying on the mast of the ship on top there. There it is. Okay. And there it goes, sailing out to sea, heading to the Strait of Hormuz to guard and safeguard the strait. All right, folks, thank you for watching my video. God bless you through these tough times. Hang in there, and I'll see you next time.